Let's start off by thinking about this dark word, a eulogy. What is a eulogy? If you think about it, it's when a bunch of people that know you really well get together and talk about who you are when you're at your best. They talk about, what are you capable of when you made your best impact on me or my family? What I find really odd is that we wait until people die to do that. As a species, we made that decision. And what I've spent a lot of my time over the last, 5 years now thinking about is, what if we didn't wait until people died? What if we thought about activating people at their best while they're still around? So what I'm talking about right now comes dangerously close to a concept called a best self and activating your best self. And so we kind of have to start with some basics, like, do we really think there is such a thing? And if it is in existence, can we turn it on? Can we turn it off? One of the things that's really intrigued me over the last 5 years of studying this topic is I don't think there's such a thing as a self. I believe at this point that a self is just a story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. Let me give you an example of that to kind of show you what I mean. Let's say you have a little child, and that little kid's maybe 6 years old or 7 years old, and guess what? A little kid like that has to learn what they're capable of. They got to experiment with the world. They got to enter and try things out. And as they do that, there will be mistakes. They'll break stuff. They'll make mistakes. Now, that's normal. That's how kids learn. But if you have an abusive parent that says you're an idiot, you're stupid, you make those actions because you're dumb, and you feed that child that story until they're 12 or 13 years old, they'll start to import that story. They'll start to believe that. Now, it isn't true. It wasn't true. But if they start to believe it, then it has a way of becoming true, because it starts to affect the way they feel about the world. It starts to affect the way they take risks or don't, make friends or don't. This is what I'm really intrigued by. I'm intrigued by the idea that depending on the story that you accept and that you think about, it starts to be who you are. And what I'm really intrigued by is it possible to activate the other side? Could we become who we are at our best more often? Sometimes I think about this like if you have an athlete, you know how they make these highlights reels? A highlights reel is basically showing that athlete at the best that they can be. It's the best kick, where the ball just goes over the goalie's arms and into the net, or the perfect pass. Now, none of us think that's who they really are 24 hours a day. None of us think that they don't have limitations they have to work on. None of us are saying that the highlights reel is a representation of reality. But what it seems to do for these athletes is prove to them what they're capable of. And they might watch that as they try to get better. They might try to make those peak behaviors part of their identity or their self, so that when they think about who they are, those are the images that come up. And this is the idea of chronic accessibility. Chronic accessibility is, what comes to mind when you think of yourself automatically? It's a little bit like a brand in a sense. When I say Coca-Cola or I say Nike, images come to mind. They paid a lot for those images. It doesn't mean they're true. And it doesn't mean that we hold the same ones. It just means there will be images that come to mind automatically. And that's chronic accessibility. What I'm interested in is it possible, by providing evidence and reflection on what we're capable of at our best, that our self would start to be these images of our peak performance? And might that change our behavior? I tried this out with a company in India. I had 2 colleagues. And we went and looked at a company called Wipro. It's a technology company in India. And they have a call center as part of their basic operations. Call centers are pretty tricky places to work. People generally do not call happy. Do you see what I mean? Generally speaking, people don't call up and say, yeah, no, it's working. No, thank you. Just wanted to let you know. Generally, it's a hassle, it's a problem, my printer isn't feeding, and no, it's tough work. We went into this organization where people were quitting pretty frequently, and they weren't making customers that happy. And they gave us 605 people that we could kind of, well, frankly, mess with a little bit. And we messed with different people in different ways. We randomly assigned groups to different conditions as they were hired. A bunch of the people we didn't do anything with at all. That's called a pure control group. We just let it go. But some of the people we had come in the very first day, in fact, the very first hour, we had a senior leader come out and say, welcome to Wipro. But before we even talk about the job, I want to know more about you. I want to know who you are when you're at your best. So what I'm going to ask you to do is something a little weird. I want you to sit here and reflect on a time that you felt that you were at your best. I want you to think of a specific memory of a time that you felt you were most alive. Work or not work, I don't mind. So they did that, 15 minutes. They sat there, they thought about that, and he had them write it down. And he said, okay, now you folks haven't even met each other. It's your first day. So I'm going to put you over here in this room, and I want you to each introduce yourself, but I want you to introduce your best self. Tell these people what you're capable of when you're at your best, and maybe read that story that you just wrote. Now, here's the thing. We tracked these people for 6 months. That's a fair amount of work. And what we learned is in the best self condition, they not only were more likely to stick around, how much more? 32% more. They made the customers 11% happier. Statistically significant difference. Now, what's going on there? How could it be that that 1 hour changed the outcome 6 months later? My guess is there's a lot of stuff going on there, and my guess is we do not fully understand yet what is happening with positive psychology. But I can tell you one thing that did seem to happen based on the evidence is we ignited their seeking systems. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the phrase seeking system. I hadn't 3 years ago. It's a bit of neuroscience, and most neuroscientists agree that there is a part of our brain that is dedicated to getting us to explore our environment and understand our ability to make an impact. Cause and effect. How do you act in a way that affects the environment and other people? And this part of the brain urges us to explore the environment and see how we can make that impact, to learn more about our unique abilities. This part of the brain, also called the ventral striatum, when it gets activated, that is to say, when we follow its urges, it releases dopamine. I don't know if you know, but dopamine is the legal cousin to cocaine. Or so friends tell me. What I mean by this is dopamine is an enthusiasm maker. It makes people feel more alive. It makes them want to do more. So when we follow the urges of this seeking system, we get a reward that makes life feel like it's more worth living. Kids have this innately. It's not something you have to train. It's a biology that already exists. So if you have a little kid and they're playing with some little toy and it may have numbers and flashing lights, that's great for the first week. The next week, your car keys will be more interesting. There's a lot of evidence suggesting that when you get people to think about their best selves, it lights them up, makes them want to do more in life. Let me give you 2 examples. In one of them, Janine Dutcher at UCLA did some studies where she randomly took people and divided them into 2 groups. In one group, she had them write about household objects, a toaster, a coffee pot. The other ones, she had them write about themselves at their best, their unique values, what mattered the most to them. Before she did this, she hooked them all up to an fMRI machine so they could look to see where the blood was moving in the brain. What they found is in this side, it activated their seeking system. The ventral striatum lit up. In another study, somebody named Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, he took lots and lots of people, half of them pure control, and half of them he put in a condition where he just had them reflect on who they were at their best, found their signature strengths, and said, I want you to try to be that a little bit more each day. Not all day, but a little bit every day. And what he found is the people in that condition were not only happier with their lives, more joy, but also statistically less depressive symptoms, less headaches, less trouble waking up in the morning, less trouble falling asleep. Those people felt more like life was a gift and less like life was a hassle. So here's what it implies. It starts to imply that the seeking system is something that we can light up. But what about that eulogy? What about the idea that different people in our social network get together and write about us? This is an idea that I captured from the University of Michigan. Some of my heroes there came up with the concept of a reflected best self, where it's not you thinking about it, it's your social network. And they all write about times that they've seen you at your best. And I know of 4 studies right now that suggests that this not only makes people better creative problem solvers, it makes them more resilient in the face of stress and social anxiety. Rather than shutting down and succumbing, they light up and they're resilient. It also, in one study, made them statistically significantly more resistant to disease. Clearly, something big is happening when we activate people's best selves. Now, I know that it's weird. I know that it is strange. It's not done. For you that are British, I know that it's a special place in hell. And yet the data suggest that those humans have the stories. They carry them around with you and they want to write them down for you. And you want to hear them. That you feel warm and you feel gratitude. And it's the idea that it lights up your mind and helps you be a better creative problem solver. And I just find it so interesting we don't do it until we die. I think that's about to change. I think that organizations today want people to be more lit up. I think that organizations want people to bring more than their hands to work. I think they want them to bring their whole selves, their creative problem-solving ideas, and their emotions, their positive emotions to connect with clients and customers. I see this as a possible tool that not only puts more living into the life of employees, but also gets companies to be more adaptive and responsive. I'm going to leave you with this. It seems clear that human beings have a need to think about purpose. Why are we here? And it also seems very clear that a lot of people think the purpose is to figure out what my gifts are so that I can give them away. Rather than think of this best self-activation as something that might create arrogance or complacency, our data and our interviews suggest that instead it makes people feel invigorated and like they want to give more back. They say, if I'm capable of this, why am I not being that more often? What I can tell you is our data suggests that if we help people find their gifts, their instinct is to give them away. Thank you very much.